Labeled as Fishy Girl in her small coastal town, Jenna McAllister never imagined a life beyond the scent of salt and sea. But when fate intervenes, she's given a chance to rise above the taunts and nets, embarking on a journey from the humble shores of Rockhaven to the dazzling world of high fashion. Jenna McAllister had lived her whole life in the small, coastal town of Rockhaven. Her family made their living on the sea, just as generations had before them. Each morning, Jenna joined her father and younger brother out on their small fishing boat, casting lines and hauling nets. By noon, she helped her mother and sister at the market, selling the day's catch, scales clinging to her hair and her hands etched with the scent of the ocean. People in town didn't see Jenna for what she was, a young woman with a striking, almost otherworldly beauty that even she couldn't recognize. Her eyes were a brilliant shade of green, like the water near the shore on a clear day, framed by long lashes and freckles dusted across her cheeks from long days in the sun. But Rockhaven was a small town, and to everyone there, she was just Fishy Jenna, a nickname cruelly bestowed upon her by some of the boys at school who'd whisper and snicker behind her back. One afternoon, as Jenna and her family were packing up their gear after a long day at sea, a sleek black car limped its way into the town square, sputtering and jerking until it finally came to a stop. A woman with long, wavy hair stepped out, inspecting the engine with a furrowed brow. "Need a hand there?" Jenna's father called, taking off his cap and heading over. "Yes, please," she said, her voice exasperated. "I'm supposed to be in the city tonight. Is there a mechanic around here?" Rockhaven didn't have a full-time mechanic, but Jenna's dad offered to help, knowing enough to get her car back on the road. While her father worked, Jenna stayed back, watching the woman's graceful movements, how she held herself even in frustration. She seemed out of place, like she belonged on a movie set, not in their small town. The woman noticed Jenna's quiet gaze and smiled. "Hey there," she said, waving Jenna over. "I'm Natalie." She extended a perfectly manicured hand. "What's your name?" "Jenna," she said softly, not meeting Natalie's eyes. "Well, Jenna, do you work on the boats too?" Jenna nodded. "My family's in fishing. Has been for ages." Natalie studied her thoughtfully. "You know, you have the kind of face I see on magazine covers," she said casually. Jenna laughed, the idea so outlandish it didn't register. "Oh, I'm just Jenna from Rockhaven," she said with a small smile, gesturing to her messy braid and worn-out sweater. But Natalie's gaze didn't waver. "I'm serious," she insisted. "There's something about you, something raw, natural." Natalie reached in her bag and pulled out a small card. "Listen, I work for an agency in the city. We're holding auditions next week, looking for fresh faces. I think you'd be perfect." Jenna looked at the card, the glossy print catching the light. "I don't know. I don't think that's for me," she stammered, handing it back. Natalie took Jenna's hands in hers. "Believe me, Jenna, I see a lot of faces every day, and not everyone has what you have. Give it a shot. Worst case, it's just an experience, right?" For the rest of the evening, Jenna was haunted by Natalie's words. Could it be true? Could she, a girl who smelled like fish and salt water, have a chance in a world of glamour? Later that night, as they were closing up shop, her younger sister, Tessa, nudged her. "So what did that lady say to you?" Jenna hesitated. She thinks I could be a model." Tessa's eyes widened. "You?" Jenna shrugged. "Yeah, me. Weird, right?" "No way." Tessa squealed. "That's amazing." But Jenna looked down, uncertain. "I don't know if it's possible. I mean, I'd have to go to the city, and I've got work here. And even if I tried, who's going to want a fishy girl like me?" Tessa shook her head, looking up at her sister with admiration. "Jenna, you're the most beautiful person I know. You should at least try." With Tessa's encouragement, Jenna finally decided she would go, if only to satisfy her sister's urging. On the day of the audition, she packed a small bag and got on the bus to the city, her stomach in knots. She barely slept the night before, wrestling with doubt and excitement. She wore her best clothes, a simple sundress and sandals, and did her best to tame her wild hair, though the faint scent of fish still clung to her skin. She barely noticed it herself, but she worried everyone else would. When she arrived at the agency, a line of girls stretched out the door. They were impeccably dressed, with sleek hair and confident smiles. Jenna felt her pulse quicken, shrinking into herself as she watched them walk past. She found a spot in line, tucking her hands in her pockets and fidgeting nervously. Finally, her turn came, and she stepped into the sleek, glass-paneled building. An attendant with sharp, cold eyes looked her up and down, sneering slightly. "You're here for the audition?" Jenna nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes, ma'am." The attendant gave her a look of disdain. "You should have put a little more effort into your appearance, don't you think? This is a professional agency, not a fish market." Heat flooded Jenna's cheeks, shame prickling up her neck. She stammered an apology, but the woman waved her off dismissively. "We don't have time for unprepared girls." Next, tears stung Jenna's eyes as she shuffled out, humiliated and heartbroken. She found a bench outside and collapsed onto it, staring at her hands as her vision blurred. She'd been foolish to think she could belong in a place like that. A fish girl from Rockhaven had no place in a world of glamour and sophistication. She was still wiping away a stray tear when she heard a familiar voice. "Jenna." She looked up to see Natalie, who was approaching her with a concerned expression, another woman in tow, a tall, elegant woman with an air of authority. "What happened? Did you have your audition?" Natalie asked, sitting beside her. Jenna shook her head, looking down ashamed. "They wouldn't let me. I didn't look right," she whispered, her voice breaking. "The lady at the desk, she said I looked like I belonged at a fish market." The older woman standing beside Natalie, whom Jenna now recognized as the agency's director and Foster, clenched her jaw. "That's absurd," and muttered, her sharp gaze softening as she took in Jenna's red, tear-streaked face. "Let's go back inside, Jenna. I'm the one in charge here, and you'll get your audition." Jenna hesitated, glancing back at the sleek building, then at Natalie, who nodded encouragingly. "You got this, Jenna. Trust me." Together, they led her back inside, and then shot a pointed look at the front desk attendant, who went pale and quickly averted her eyes. Jenna was whisked down a hallway and into a small, private room with a mirror, where Natalie helped her fix her hair and apply some light makeup. "Look at you," Natalie murmured as Jenna studied herself in the mirror, stunned at the transformation. For the first time, she could see herself as Natalie did, not just as Jenna from Rockhaven, but as someone with potential, someone who could belong in the world of beauty and fashion. A few minutes later, Jenna walked into the audition room, her heart hammering but her posture steady. The room was large, with bright lights casting a warm glow on everything. A panel of talent scouts, agents, and photographers sat at a long table, their eyes fixed on her as she stepped in. Jenna felt the weight of their gaze and fought the urge to shrink back, her hands trembling slightly. But then she remembered Natalie's encouraging smile and her sister Tessa's words, and she lifted her head. "Thank you for giving me a chance," Jenna began, her voice soft but steady. She saw and gave her a small nod of approval, and with a deep breath, she began her walk. Each step felt surreal, like she was moving through a dream. She forced herself to focus, placing one foot in front of the other with as much grace as she could muster. As she reached the end of the runway, she let herself glance at the panel, and to her amazement, they seemed intrigued. There were murmurs of approval, and one of the photographers even whispered something to his neighbor, both nodding. "Jenna, could you turn to the side?" one of the agents asked. "Now face forward again, and could you walk one more time for us?" With each pass, Jenna's confidence grew. She held her head higher, feeling the tension in her shoulders release as she let herself enjoy the moment. She wasn't thinking about the fish market or the taunts she'd endured back in Rockhaven. She was here, in the city, standing in a room filled with people who saw something more in her. When she finished her walk, the room was silent. She shifted nervously, waiting for someone to say something, anything. Finally, one of the agents leaned forward, adjusting his glasses as he looked at her with a small smile. "Jenna, how would you feel about joining us as a model?" Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. "Why, you mean you want me?" "Yes," and said, her expression warm. "You have something unique, Jenna. You're fresh, genuine. There's an elegance about you that comes from within, and that's not something we see every day." Jenna felt tears welling up, but she blinked them back, smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. Thank you so much." As she left the room, Natalie was waiting for her, a grin spreading across her face. "See? I told you. You belong here." Jenna threw her arms around Natalie, overcome with gratitude. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you," she whispered. "Just remember where you came from," Natalie replied, hugging her back. "Stay true to yourself, Jenna. The world needs more of that." Within weeks, Jenna's life changed in ways she never could have imagined. Her face began appearing in local magazines, then larger publications, until she was gracing the covers of national glossies. She was flown from city to city for shoots and interviews, her schedule filling up with jobs, runway shows, and commercials. Yet, through it all, she stayed grounded, rooted by the memories of home and the people who believed in her first. The industry was not without its challenges. Jenna encountered harsh critics who questioned her background and the simplicity she exuded compared to the polished, seasoned models around her. But she quickly learned to hold her head high, brushing off those who couldn't see beyond the surface. Her humility and resilience became her trademarks, setting her apart in an industry that often valued looks over substance. One evening, after a particularly grueling photo shoot, Jenna found herself sitting in her hotel room, scrolling through messages from her family. Tessa had sent her a photo of the catch that day, alongside a caption that read, "When are you coming back, superstar?" She smiled and typed back, "Next weekend. I'll bring pizza, my treat." When she returned to Rockhaven, the whole town seemed to light up at her arrival. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, her face free from makeup, and for a moment, she was just Jenna again. The smell of salt and fish greeted her as she made her way to the dock where her family was unloading their haul. "Look who's here," Tessa called, dropping her basket and rushing over to wrap her arms around her sister. "Hey, Tessa," Jenna laughed, hugging her back, her heart swelling with warmth. Their parents joined in, pulling her close and peppering her with questions about her travels. Jenna answered each one, relishing the familiarity and love in every word, every laugh. As the day wound down, Jenna joined her family at the market, falling back into the rhythm of their routine, helping weigh and pack the fish. Passers-by waved and congratulated her on her success, treating her like a hometown hero. And though the scent of fish still clung to her clothes, Jenna felt at peace, grounded by the life she'd known so well. But as night fell, she and Tessa took a walk along the shore, a quiet moment between sisters. Tessa nudged her, grinning mischievously. "So, what's it like, being famous?" Jenna laughed, shaking her head. It's surreal, Tessa, but you know, when I'm there, I miss here. The people, the smell of the sea." She paused, staring out at the waves. "I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for you, for all of you. This place is a part of me." Tessa nodded, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I knew you'd make it, Jenna. You always had it in you." Jenna squeezed her sister's hand, the words sinking in. "You're the reason I even tried," she said softly. "I didn't believe in myself the way you did." The two stood in comfortable silence, watching the waves crash against the shore. It was here, in the simplicity of home, that Jenna felt most like herself, a girl from a small fishing town who had once dared to dream. As her career continued to blossom, Jenna made it a point to visit Rockhaven every chance she got. Each time she returned, she felt a sense of balance, as though the two parts of her life, the glamour and the grit, could finally coexist. Years passed, and Jenna's face became known across the world. She graced billboards, starred in high-profile ad campaigns, and even walked in fashion weeks in Paris, Milan, and New York. But fame didn't change her essence. She was still Jenna, the girl who helped her family with the catch and spent weekends at the market. And whenever she looked in the mirror, she remembered the girl who'd once thought she had no place in the world of beauty. On her last trip home, as she stood by the dock helping her father load the boat, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see a young girl, wide-eyed and clutching a notebook. "Are you Jenna McAllister?" Jenna smiled, nodding. "I am." The girl hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I just wanted to say, you're my hero. You give me hope that maybe I can do something big too someday." Kneeling down to meet the girl's gaze, Jenna placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You can," she said. "Never let anyone tell you otherwise. No dream is too big." As the girl ran off, Jenna watched her go, a warmth spreading in her chest. Life had taken her on an extraordinary journey, but every step had only brought her closer to herself. And now, with a whole new generation looking up to her, she knew her journey was just beginning, this time as a guiding light for others. The world saw Jenna McAllister, the supermodel. But at heart, she'd always be Jenna from Rockhaven, the girl who chased her dreams and brought her family and her small town along with her.